Breaking news in the mystery disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. The Pima County Sheriff's Office has just confirmed shocking new information about the ransom notes that have haunted this case. For the first time, we're seeing the actual ransom notes from law enforcement, plus a chilling development that police seem to believe this was no spur-of-the-moment crime. The suspect may have stalked the home, studied the scene, and waited for the perfect moment to strike. This is a breaking news edition of On the Case.
Buried in nature now. Nothing you could have done could have changed the outcome. 4 days. That's all that separated two ransom notes that describe the exact same crime in completely opposite ways. But we're getting ahead. Let me back up, because what law enforcement just released about Nancy Guthrie's case is breaking the way this investigation could go, and I need you to feel the weight of this before I go further. 2 letters, written by the same person, or so you'd think, except they don't sound like they came from the same person at all. That's the contradiction nobody's talking about, and it's eating me alive. Let that sink in.
Well, thanks for having me, Chris. I think the timing is intentional. I think that this could mean a couple of things. It could mean that they really are at their wits' end and they have no choice or feel they have no choice but to release this information, hoping that somebody will see these notes and possibly maybe recognize the writing, or possibly this is intentional because they're trying to see how a potential suspect might react. And so there are a couple.
The first note shows up February 2nd. Professional, structured. A demand for $4 million in Bitcoin, escalating to $6 million if they don't comply. Deadlines. Consequences spelled out in clinical terms. Your mother is aware of this. Her life is in your hands, cold, methodical. This is someone who's studied what they're doing.
We have your mother, Nancy. She is safe but scared. She will be held for ransom, and once payment is received, she will be released unharmed. We will be holding her for a maximum of 7 days. You will need to send Bitcoin in the amount of $4 million USD before 5 p.m. on Thursday the 5th. If payment is not received, the ransom will be increased to $6 million USD, which will need to be paid by 5 p.m. on Monday the 9th. Once payment is received to the Bitcoin address below, she will be released within 12 hours of deposit to a safe drop-off location back in Tucson. If payment is not received by the last deadline on Monday the 9th at 5 p.m., she will be killed. Your mother is aware of this, and her life is in your hands. It is in the best interest of everyone to have this completed as soon as possible. You will not be able to contact me from here on out. There will be no negotiation. Do not play games. Law enforcement will not be able to help you. And then at the bottom, it's written as she had a white smartwatch on the floor of her bed and white floodlight in the backyard.
Then 4 days pass, February 6th, and suddenly, and I mean suddenly, the same perpetrator allegedly sends a second message. But this time it reads like a confession wrapped in an apology. We did not fully grasp the seriousness of her physical condition. She perished shortly after she was taken. Perished, not died. Not passed, perished. She is buried in nature now. That language doesn't match. It doesn't sound human.
Yeah, they may have some validity. I've always wondered if these notes were a cover to buy time to cover up a homicide. I don't know that, but it's always been a thought of mine. Obviously, they're releasing these right now for a reason. They didn't do it before then, or before this time, rather. The 6-month anniversary of Nancy Guthrie's disappearance is here. It's upon us. Mm-hmm. And so I think there are some interesting things in this note, how they're saying, don't call the cops. They're not going to help. They cannot help you. They are very adamant and certain of this. The cops had already been called. The cops had already been called by the time these notes were sent. These were sent to local TV stations and to TMZ. The cops were already aware.
Right.
That's how the cops got these notes. So I find that to be very curious. And that's why it makes me wonder, are these simply a cover and a reason and in a way or an attempt to buy time to cover up a murder? That is a thought of mine.
It sounds like something generated, scripted, written by someone trying to sound like they care when they've already proven they don't. And that's the first thread we're not resolving tonight. Let me take you back to January 31st. Nancy Guthrie goes missing from her home in Tucson. Middle of the night. No witnesses except for what a doorbell camera captures. A figure in a mask, calm, deliberate, reaching for plants on her porch like he's casing the scene. Law enforcement responds. Savannah Guthrie, Nancy's daughter, reaches out on camera pleading for her mother's safe return. And everyone assumes this is a kidnapping for ransom. It has to be. Because that's what the first note says it is. Until the second note shows up and changes everything. Because now we're wondering if maybe it was never a kidnapping at all.
Update coming in from the Pima County Sheriff in Arizona related to the Nancy Guthrie investigation. We are seeing for the first time from law enforcement the 2 ransom notes that were sent to media outlets at the beginning of all of this when Nancy Guthrie was taken from her home in the middle of the night. And also the sheriff raising some questions about when the videos were taken of that mysterious figure on Nancy Guthrie's front steps. And there is a possibility that those videos...
Who sends a ransom demand and then days later admits the victim didn't survive? I need you to sit with that question for a moment. Either these notes are fake, a cover-up, a distraction, a way to buy time while the real crime gets buried under investigation noise. Or they're real, and we're watching someone's conscience break down in real time across 4 days of written confessions. There's no middle ground here. One of those things is true, and neither of them makes sense. The first note has a misspelling. Received comes out as something else. That detail matters because it suggests someone unfamiliar with English writing patterns. Someone who might live south of the border, maybe.
I'm going to point that out. Received is spelled incorrectly in this note. And, do not play games. Law enforcement won't be able to help you. But they do offer those details, those 2 details to say, look, we're serious. Go look at the floodlight. We know where we left the watch, etc. So I think there's some interesting stuff here. And I find it also interesting that Savannah Guthrie is off of work right now for the Today Show. She's out in, supposedly on the West Coast filming the Wordle show,
Right.
The new game show. So she hasn't been on the Today Show for the last week or so. So I think there's a lot of interesting stuff here. Don't call the cops, but we're going to send this to the local TV station. And so the cops had already been.
Someone who uses USD in a ransom note, something no American would ever write. You just say $6 million. You wouldn't specify the currency. Why would you? Unless you're not from here.
To me too, before we read that second one, USD. Because I just think like nobody says USD if you're in the United States. You would just say, 10 million, $6 million. And the border, you can cross into Nogales, which is just like an hour south of Tucson. I've actually crossed that border, and it just stood out to me like how easy it is to get across too. The border may open, I think, at like 6 a.m., but like they're not checking papers on the way across. So you just wonder like if they were able to get over the border, just how easy it would be to, it's not like coming back where they actually go through your passport and everything.
Unless you're translating this demand in your head before you type it. That contradiction sits under everything else, and law enforcement knows it. But then you've got Savannah Guthrie, Nancy's daughter. She releases a video this week, weeks into the investigation, and she's not talking to media. She's talking to one person. One specific person. She's pleading with someone she thinks might still have a soul. It's never too late to do the right thing. She's speaking to the person who wrote the second note, I think. The one with the confession. The one with the guilt. She's counting on that guilt to make someone come forward. That's strategy. That's someone who studied this case as closely as we have and come to the conclusion that there's someone involved in this, someone with empathy, someone with a conscience. And if she can just reach them, maybe they'll break.
I also don't know what has been the direct line of communication to the Guthrie family through this. We don't know if whoever sent these notes, that these are actually legit. Have they had a separate line of communication with the Guthries all along? And that's why Savannah, I'm not saying it, but like, that's why maybe a video came out this week. We don't know why she chose that particular moment to put out that video with a call out to this.
Then there's law enforcement. 6 months. 6 months and still no arrest. The DNA came back negative. The ransom notes are released to the public. The doorbell footage is re-examined, and now they're saying those videos might be from 2 separate nights.
Right now are the videos and the images initially released by Kash Patel, the FBI director, of that person in a mask, seemingly armed, on Nancy Guthrie's front steps. And people may remember that this was video they said had to be extracted from, because Ring, if you don't pay for a particular service, it doesn't get saved to the cloud. It had to be extracted. So there wasn't a lot of information surrounding like when this video was taken. We know from times of when it was, turned off, but in terms of when that video and this person was actually on her front steps, like that wasn't clear. But now they're saying, quote, 2 videos recovered from Nancy's doorbell camera may be from 2 separate days. These videos are critical to our understanding of the unidentified male's behaviors and choices. They indicate he took steps to prepare for the event on the night of January 31st to February 1st, which is so chilling to think about this not being, because there's that theory out there of maybe they just hit a house, it was a burglary, and they didn't know that Nancy was going to be there. If this actually happened on 2 separate nights where they get this video, it shows that maybe there was more planning than some people thought when it came to targeting, and we don't know particularly the motive yet, but certainly targeting someone with a daughter who's worth a lot of money.
2 separate nights means premeditation. 2 separate nights means this person came to that house, studied it, understood what he was walking into, and came back when he was ready. That's not a random burglary. That's not a crime of opportunity. That's someone targeting Nancy Guthrie specifically, targeting her daughter, targeting her wealth. And that matters because it narrows the circle. It suggests someone close enough to know.
I think that there was a lot of planning that actually went into this. That's my feeling. Just the fact that you would go there prior to the crime to case the place and see what you're going to be up against. I find that to be really interesting. And, there had been some reporting, as you said earlier, sourced reporting earlier in this case, talking about how the fact that there were people involved in the investigation that believed these notes were sent on, or that the videos rather were from different dates. So I think it's chilling, of course, as you say. The person, porch guy, that we've seen already on the videos, and we see that up close picture of him, the video, and the mustache through the mask. That's a cold operator as far as I'm concerned. It does not seem, frazzled at all. The plants, reaching for the plants is obviously a very strange part of this, and makes no sense to me. But, it screams to me premeditation and pre-planning.
Someone who understood the value of what he was taking.
Everyone has a network, and someone in that network, you would have to hope, has that soul if they know something. And over time, you hope the burden.
But here's what gets me, and I don't know exactly what it is about this that's been under my skin. Law enforcement sits on this information for months, and then they release it all at once in a press conference right around the 6-month anniversary when they know media coverage will spike. Is that desperation? Is that strategy? Or is that an institution that's hit a wall and doesn't know what else to do?
Forensics in this case, the digital evidence of like the ransom note and where that may have come from, where these videos came from in the days. Just what do you take of it being the sheriff's office being the one putting this information out today?
Well, they're the lead agency. The FBI is in a support position. The FBI has all of the expertise when it comes to the electronics and the resources to analyze all of those items, and the cell phone triangulation data and pinging towers, and the CAS team with the FBI. They have all of those resources, but the Pima County Sheriff is still the lead on this case. And so the FBI is simply assisting and offering resources. The task force, I was told personally that, the initial detective who was in charge of this has been replaced with a more seasoned investigator. That was a misstep in the beginning, and that they are working together. At least those task force members are working together collaboratively on trying to solve this. So while the FBI brings a lot of resources to the table and likely is analyzing all of this video and things of that nature, I mean, those things take time. It takes time. So the Pima County Sheriff is going to be, until there's...
Sheriff Nanos and the FBI have been at odds over timing, over resources, over who should have been called first and when. And while they're fighting, Nancy Guthrie's family is waiting. Savannah is filming game shows on the West Coast, and her mother is buried somewhere, and the system that's supposed to find her keeps talking about coordination problems instead of results. Think about those 2 notes again. The first one says law enforcement can't help. Don't call the cops. They won't be able to help you. But the cops were already called. The notes were sent to media outlets, to TMZ. This perpetrator knew the cops would see these. He wanted them to see these. So why would he tell Savannah not to call them if he knew they'd already be involved? Unless those notes were never about getting ransom, unless they were about something else entirely, unless they were a cover for something worse. That's the second thread, and it's still open. 6 months. Guilt eating away at someone. Somewhere in Tucson or across the border in Mexico, someone knows. Someone's behavior changed. Someone's missing work. Someone's avoiding their network because they can't face what they've done. And Savannah's video is speaking to them. The confession note is speaking to them. The question is whether guilt will break them before the system does. So here's what we don't know. We don't know if those ransom notes are real or cover up. We don't know if the person who wrote them is the same person in both videos. We don't know why the tone changed so drastically between February 2nd and February 6th. We don't know who was targeting Nancy specifically or why. We don't know if law enforcement and the FBI are actually collaborating or just pretending to be. And most importantly, we don't know where Nancy Guthrie is or whether she was ever alive after those first 48 hours. What's your theory? Because I've got questions and I need your take in the comments.